This is Beyond the Moon, a Ditch Witch podcast where we dig deep into news, job site stories, Ditch Witch culture, and all the other dirt that makes up the industry.
Hey, witches and warlocks.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Moon, a Ditch Witch podcast. We've got Chris Thompson with us here today. He's a vacuum excavation product manager. How's it going, Chris?
Good, Sean. How are you?
Good, pretty good. So usually we start these with a little housekeeping thing and just kind of some news or something that's happened within the company. But I feel like we'd be burying the lead if we did that. So I want to jump right in and talk about a recent experience that you had on a golf course. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, but I was actually on a golf trip earlier in the summer, and I got a text from Mr. Thompson here that said, I just made a hole-in-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk about that. Tell me about that. Where were we at? What were we doing?
So we're at Lakeside.
Okay.
I was playing with my brother-in-law and my son. My brother-in-law is about a 6 handicap.
Oh.
My son actually is a 14-year-old scratch golfer, which I'm pretty proud of. He's worked very hard to do that.
Yeah, what's his name?
Kian.
Kian, that's right.
Yeah. And so I was with them. My wife was there. She was riding along with us, having a good time. And we got up to hole number 12, and she had been coaching me the whole time. She played college golf,
right.
And she does a little bit of golf. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she does a little bit of golf coaching on the side.
I gotcha.
And so she was kind of giving me some pointers, trying to help me because my handicap's pretty high.
Yep.
And so we got to number 12, and I just kind of tried to listen to what she was telling me to do, and everything just kind of clicked. And it wasn't like it rolled up and rolled in like it was lucky. I mean, it was right on it from the start. I actually didn't believe it went in. I thought my brother-in-law and my son were having fun with me. But they're like, that went in. And I was like, I don't know about that. But we got up there, and it was in the hole.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you remember what club you hit? What yardage
so it was an 8
stuff?
iron, 123 yards.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited about that. My son makes fun of me because I think he hits pitching wedge like 160.
That's all right. It doesn't matter. It went in the hole. So did you save the ball and have it framed?
Yeah,
and all
so
that
my
kind of
wife actually got the ball and got the scorecard. And so there's like the scorecard in that back 9 because it was hole number 12. So it goes like 4, 6, 1, 5, 9.
7,
yeah. So it's a definitely you have to have a calculator to add up my
There
scores.
you go. Looks like a bingo card.
That's okay.
Yeah. No, that's all good.
Yeah, so it was a great experience, and especially to hold that over my son. He is he's got about 5, 6 eagles on par 4s.
Yeah.
Or 5s, both that he does during tournaments, and he'll keep the balls if he does that during a tournament. But he hasn't had a hole in one, and so I get to hold that over.
Hopefully he'll have one soon. But until then, you got the bragging rights for sure.
Yeah,
so yeah, Chris and I are friends on Facebook, and I see a lot of stuff that he shares about his son, and he's got an awesome golf swing. I want to play with him, but
unfortunately,
well, maybe not from you.
Yeah, no, maybe from her.
Yeah, no doubt. But on the topic of sports, Chris, you have a seemingly random group of professional teams and college teams that you follow. I may be way off here, but I was hoping you could kind of connect the dots for me on you're a Oklahoma Sooners fan, Dallas Cowboys fan, St. Louis Cardinals fan.
Right.
Where did all those come from? Is that just a youth thing or what?
Yeah, that's not that unnatural for the area I grew up in. So I grew up in Muskogee, which is in eastern Oklahoma, and just a little bit south of Tulsa. And so growing up, KOMA would have the Cardinals games on the radio. And so I'm a little bit older than you, Sean. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I would have guessed.
And probably a little bit poorer growing up. So we had radio, not TV sometimes. And so we would listen to it on the radio. My parents took me to Cardinals games when we were younger. And so there's the Cardinals connection. The Dallas Cowboys are just, I mean, there's a lot of OU players that went to Dallas, and they were technically the closest pro team. I mean, you could say the Kansas City Chiefs were close, but they're the closest pro team to us, and so I naturally followed that. Plus, my grandma is really the connection to both of those. My grandma, my granddad had season tickets to OU for years. I don't know how far back exactly, but they were taking me to games when I was 5,
Just
6.
Football games?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were taking me to games to
awesome.
OU Texas, to OU games when I was very young. They'd had tickets all along. So that's really where that came from. I didn't attend OU. I attended UCO. so that we went that route with it. So I'm not an OU grad, and a lot of times in Perry, particularly, people want to make fun of people who are rooting for a school that they didn't attend. I think it's just because the only people who root for OSU are the ones who attended, and so they have to hang on to that a little bit. But
yeah, that's fair.
No, my grandparents, my grandparents took me to OU games when I was very young, and then when my grandma got older, I would drive her. About the only time my grandma's ever been mad at me is we were going to the Colorado game the year that Schnellenberger was the coach.
Okay.
And so OU was 4-0, 5-0 going into that game, and everyone thought, oh, this is crazy. He did this in Miami. He's going to do this at OU. We're back.
Yeah.
Kind of like Texas thinks they're back every year. No, we're going to be back this year. And so she wanted to get there, and she always wants to get there and go to the cafeteria, walk around, see the tailgates, walk through the stadium, do all these things. So she wants to be there like 3 hours before the game starts.
Right. It's a full day.
Yeah, I was a teenager. I had other things going on. I picked her up much later than she wanted to. Didn't speak to me all the way over from Muskogee to Norman until we got to about Shawnee. So we're talking about an hour and a half in, probably about another 45 minutes in the trip. And after not talking to me the whole time, she goes, well, I guess I can't be mad at you all day. And then after that, it was forgiven.
And it was all good.
Yeah.
It's like nothing happened.
Yeah, but no, she's the main reason why I'm an OU fan, and then she watched Dallas as well.
I've always wondered that. It just seems like a random smattering of teams, but that all checks out. So, Workwise, you are currently the vacuum excavation product manager for Ditch Witch, but you haven't been in that position for your entire your career. So, when did you start? What department were you in? Just kind of some of the roles that you've had within the division.
So, I started in 2014 with Ditch Witch.
Okay.
I started in the sales department, and I had the West Coast territory. So at the time, that was El Paso, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. So I did that for around 18 months to 2 years, somewhere in there. Really enjoyed that job, but I guess the best way to say it is I think a lot, probably too much sometimes. Okay. And product management kind of, thinking about things, thinking about building a new product, what we're going to design next, those types of things, that always appealed to me. And so a position came open, and I talked with Randy Rupp at the time, and he wanted to take a flyer on me, thank goodness. And so I took over the SK product line in 2016, right after my third son was born. So I had that for around 4 years. Went through and did the product management things, which basically evaluate the product line, see where we need to go, what we need to build, how they're selling, what features are helping them sell, what features maybe we need to get rid of or improve on. I kind of touched all the SK line, also had the rest of the compact equipment, about 23, 24 models. So I did that for about 4 years, kind of ran the course there. We launched all the new product by then. I kind of ran the vision I had going in, kind of completed that through to the end with the launch of the 3000.
That's what I was going to say. You were the product manager for the SK3000,
yes,
right? Yeah, and that's a wild product, right? In that space, it's huge compared to everything else.
Yeah, we had a great team on that, and I was very excited to work with them. And once we launched that, I was kind of looking for a new challenge.
Right.
And so went over to Subsite briefly and worked on some stuff there. We were doing some data stuff and doing some stuff around the locators. That was also right about the time. So I moved over to Subsite in 2020 in January.
Okay.
And so March, we're in full COVID.
Yeah.
And then, you're not in the office. It's hard to get out and see customers. So that became an interesting time for sure. I mean, I'm proud of the work we did, and we worked hard there, but it was different than what we were used to.
Right.
You're used to being out in front of people, and that didn't work out. Then luckily the Vac job came open. And a funny story about the Vac job is that Vac job originally came open the first time in my tenure there when Jason Proctor left us briefly in 2017. But I'd only had Compact for about 9-10 months at the time.
Yeah.
Randy and I talked about whether I should go to the Vac job or not, because that was kind of my passion, especially having the West Coast territory, which is a very heavy Vac territory. And we both agreed that, probably don't need to change ships that fast. You've been in this, you got some good things going. Let's just keep it going.
Yep.
The next time around when it opened, whenever Chapman stepped away, it was a natural fit.
I gotcha.
And so
the time is now.
Yeah, so I applied for the job, took the job, don't plan on giving it up anytime soon.
Right.
About 3.5 years in now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. There's been a bunch of new offerings within that line too, the Vac excavation line. But one thing, let's just back up and reset on equipment wise for listeners or viewers that we have that may not know what vacuum excavation is.
Sure.
So can you just give us a very high level, what is a vacuum excavator and what can it do?
So the reason that vacuum excavation appealed to me is I start thinking about the industry as a whole, and basically what a vac does is it sucks. That's pretty straightforward. But what you do is you use high pressure water to dig, and then you use the vacuum to remove the soil. So what you're doing is you're trying to expose underground utilities. You're trying to maybe do some digging in an area where you can't get a good locate. Maybe potentially the pipe was put in with plastic without tracer wire. The tracer wire is shorted out, and so you don't necessarily know what's in the ground. So you can use that to do what they call slot trenching. So you go in and you basically just dig a hole with a vac. I did that whenever I was in sales at the Lutheran Church in Perry. They wanted to put a new electric line in. Well, that church had existed for about 110 years.
Yeah,
and there wasn't good records of exactly where the utilities were. It was on a private property, and so basically what I did is I took a vac out there, and they only needed to go like 18 inches deep to put this line in.
Okay.
So I just basically slot trenched a line from where the box they wanted to the front where they were going to put the lights on the sign, and just did that slot trench. And I covered 2 utilities, I think, that I covered during that time.
That's what I was going to ask. How much stuff did you cross?
Yeah. So
what would have happened if you did that with a trencher?
Yeah. So
right?
you did that
Not
with a
good.
trencher. Yeah. You tear those utility lines up, and I think they were irrigation lines, so it wouldn't have been the end of the whole world. But it's a way to safely dig. And when you start thinking about how congested right-of-ways are these days, how much utilities are in the ground, it's an opportunity to go out there and still use our products and still help people with underground utilities, but a little bit safer way.
It's a pressure washer with a shop vac on steroids.
Yeah, that's a lot of what a hydrovac is for sure. Now, we make mud vacs that are basically drill support.
Okay, yeah.
And some of our vacs do have air features, and so you can dig with air instead. It's not quite as efficient, but you can put the spoils back in the ground, and in the right locations, particularly a sandy soil, it's a good feature.
Okay. Yeah, and so that kind of leads me into what I was going to next is at Ditch Witch, there's such a wide variety of vacuum excavators throughout the lineup. So there's a couple gas units, and then there's massive diesel stuff that goes up to the W12.
Right.
So can you explain just a little bit on which vac would be used in best in which application, or why is there such a variety? Is a vac? Just kind of talk about
that makes sense. So we started in the trailer vacs, and that's where we cut our teeth, and we have a great offering of trailer vacs. However, people sometimes want those to be more mobile. When you start thinking about a large vac that you're towing behind a large truck, it takes up a lot of space, particularly in an urban area. And so we started putting our vacs on the back of trailers. Or back of trucks, I apologize. Right. So you had the truck power, and then you had the vac power on there, both 2 engines on there, the truck and the vac. And that worked for a while. But ultimately, for the really big jobs, for people who are going to be out in oil fields, people who are going to be out digging all day, every day, large holes, basically, people who are contract locators are going to go out and expose pipe for drill operators or expose pothole for somebody. They need something that's even more powerful. And so what you do is you tie the truck engine in to a transfer case or a PTO, and then you're able to use that 525 horsepower engine or whatever engine you have on the truck to power your vac. And that's really where the Warlock series comes in. We've been doing those about 2 years now. Okay. We have a great team of people on there that help us out with that, and we've been really proud of that offering.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit with the introduction of the Warlock. So the W12, that is significantly bigger as far as vacuum excavators go than anything else we've always or ever offered.
Sure, absolutely.
So what went into that? Like, how does that fit into the Ditch Witch fleet? I mean, it's so much bigger. It looks so much different. It's cool, but I guess what was the decision to bring that into the company, and how's it going?
We had gotten to a point where there were dealers who were going to start looking at vacuums of that size, whether we were participating or not. And so it was important that we get in there and we take care of those guys. That market is still a high growth market. Right. And if you look at drills are great. Drill growth is growing, but not at just a giant pace like it was in the 90s and the early 2000s. And so vacuum excavation and compact equipment are really the kind of the growth engines right now. And so we needed to make sure we had a full range of offerings.
Yeah, and that full range starts with the HX30G, correct? Right. Is that the smallest?
Well, there's an FX20 still.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the G on the HX30G refers to a gas-powered engine, and that's kind of I think you would describe it as an introductory vac. Like, who would you see using that, and why did we bring that in?
When we go to trade shows or we talk to people and they're like, hey, we're thinking about getting into vacs, we talk to them about, okay, what is it you're going to be doing? How often are you going to use it? And a lot of times people might want to just kind of dip their toe in.
Right. And
so if they dip their toe in, they can get into gas vac. It's a little less cost. It's probably not going to have the longevity that a diesel vac has. It's not going to have the power that a diesel vac has necessarily. But it's a good offering. It does a good job. If you're wanting to say, hey, I want to branch my business out, but I don't want to outlay just a ton of capital, it's a great way to start. And they're very reliable. We just released a 1,000 CFM gas vac that we're proud of. And so they're a great offering. But that's a good way to start. If you're going to own the equipment for 7 years longer, you're going to be out there running it every single day, and that's going to be your primary source, then you're probably going to want to look at a diesel. But we do have that gas offering as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So on the marketing side of that, with the vacuum excavation stuff, a couple years ago, we had a Vac That campaign. I don't know if you remember that, but it was really fun, and we went through, I don't know, seemingly, I can't remember what the number ended up. It was like 50 something ways to use a vac.
Yeah, there were a lot of them for sure.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really fun campaign that we did, and I was just going to ask you, including those or outside of the list that we came up with, is there like an interesting or unique use of a vac that you can recall that's like, oh my gosh, that's wild, I wouldn't have even thought that you could use a vac for that?
Yeah, so I think that, one's fairly common now, but microtrenching. Yeah. I think when we started Vacs, I don't know that we really had microtrenching on our mind as far as how much that would be involved in assisting the microtrencher. But I've seen people use them in gardens. I've tried to use them in those areas. The one that I see the Warlock using a lot that I don't think was on our radar at the beginning is pole setting.
Oh, wow.
And so originally people would go in with augers or with a backhoe, and they would dig out like for a telephone pole or utility pole and then put it in. And now they've realized you can do less ground disturbance. You can do it much faster if you just go in and you just dig the hole with the vac and then put the pole in and then set it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's one that I hadn't thought of. I do know. So we, my wife and I recently built a house in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and we have this massive retaining wall that kind of holds up way too much dirt than it should. But we were having issues with that wall, and I remember calling you like, hey, is this something that we could use a Warlock for? Right. And that was when it had first come out. And I remember you came out and were like, yeah, let's give it a shot. So I guess that would be number 54 or number 55 is clear out a bunch of crap behind a retaining wall. Another use of a vac.
I think I'd be remiss to not add that I was there on the site, but there were other people that were doing a lot of the work. I was trying to stay out of the way and see how the vac did.
Well, that's what I did too. I was just supervising. It's like, no, a little more over there. Yeah. A little more over here. But yeah, it went well. So those are extremely versatile machines, and they're really cool. And I just like to see the direction that products line's going in. I think uses are just almost endless, limitless.
Yeah. And as safe digging continues to grow, it's only going to become more and more popular, which is really what I like about it, is the ability to keep drills operating, the ability to bring everyone home the same way they came to the job site. Those are all things that I'm proud of.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, good deal, Chris. I did want to wrap up with just kind of a random question of the day.
Sure.
We had talked about some sports a little bit earlier, so I didn't know if there one or two athletes or a particular team that is your favorite of all time?
I recently lost my father-in-law. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah.
And he was a huge Cardinals fan. So the Cardinals have always been near to me in my heart, but they're particularly now. Ozzie Smith.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
A funny story about that is my wife is a few years younger than me, and she grew up in a different part of the state, but we were able to stories and telling stories around the years have determined that my dad took my brother and I to a baseball card signing and a public appearance that Ozzie Smith did in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah.
And my wife was there at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we were able to figure out dates and kind of when all that happened, because she actually ended up on TV. And, they interview young kids sometimes. Yeah. So she was on the local television station being interviewed. So we know what date it was. And it just independently, we asked my parents, like, oh, yeah, we were there.
Yeah, we were there. I was going to say, did you go back and try to look at all the video clips?
Yeah.
And see if you could, there's.
Yeah, I don't think I was stalking her yet at that time. Yeah. But, that was years later.
Not yet. Well, good deal. Chris, I appreciate you hopping on today. Sure. I think it's been a good discussion. Hopefully you can join us in future seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, everybody, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Catch us next time, and we'll have another engaging conversation. Appreciate y'all.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of Beyond the Moon. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and follow us on social media @Ditch Witch.